everyone. Thank you very much for coming. It's a fun camp. I always love coming here. So this is the Media in Drupal 8 session. Originally it was supposed to be like a 20-minute quick session, but there was something that happened, and we have the full-time slot now, so we'll give even more information for your enjoyment now. And if you'd like to see these notes at all, I have a github.io link, and I'll make sure to tweet this and post it on the session page later today, too, if you want to have this for reference. So this is going to be pretty Drupal 8 focused. We're going to look back a little bit on and like retrospective on some Drupal 7 stuff, but pretty much focus on Drupal 8, which is, you know, contrast to the keynote we just heard this morning, too. So, yeah. A little bit about me. I'm Dave Reed. I work at Lullabot as a developer. I enjoy that a lot. And we're hiring too, if you're interested. Twitter, Drupal.org, all IRCM, all like my real name because I don't like pseudonyms. So they're pretty easy to find. And I'm typically known as the module guy. So I have like... And I kind of mean that, because we looked at it at one point, and it was like 2% of all contrib I've touched or written, which is a lot, considering how many modules there are out there. I'm still a core maintainer of the token system. I used to be of like the contact module and the path module in core, but I kind of resigned myself from those just because I have a kid now, as a father of one kid and 2 cats. So there's my kid, being a good Midwestern barbecue eater with the rib. That's my son Oliver. I love him. And my 2 cats, Rodney and Athena, left to right. Rodney's kind of like I have deemed him the unofficial Drupal mascot. And he's been the only cat to apply to run for the Drupal Association board. Sadly, he was declined to get on the ballot, so discrimination. So, you know, I'll just briefly touch why media is important for Drupal. These are kind of obvious things to everyone. You know, people want it and they expect it to be done right. It's kind of a given. You know, people want things to work out of the box, that kind of stuff. Competitors like WordPress do this out of the box and do it well. And so when people go to compare Drupal to WordPress, they kind of are like, whoa, Drupal doesn't have media handling? That's kind of weird. And because they don't know about all the modules you can use, that kind of stuff. So we need to build a better experience out of the box. There's lots of enterprise clients using Drupal, and they do really complex stuff with media. So not only like do we need to have the out-of-box stuff work, but like we need to handle these complex use cases too. And we need to get that done right and make it flexible enough for those. And you know what? People actually use media on their websites. They like to post GIFs and images of their vacations and that kind of stuff. They kind of use these kinds of things. So like, something people use, we should probably get done right. You know, if it was something more lesser like the poll module in Drupal core, we probably wouldn't have to work as hard. But people like this kind of stuff. And editors and people that are content creators, they want to have an easy process to work with things like this. I think it's probably a little bit complicated in Drupal 7 still. There's some solutions that are very good for kind of a usability experience, but we kind of make sure we need to focus on that too and make sure things are understandable, not too complex to get set up. Yeah, we just need to handle it well. And it's kind of just a recurring joke to me almost that like every big DrupalCon when Dries gives his keynote and like always speaks about what he would do in Drupal core, it's always like for the last 4 years, I want good media handling in Drupal. And it's like, it's going to happen again, it's going to happen again. He'd said this in DrupalCon Portland, you know, if he wanted to snap his fingers, it'd be media handling that he'd get done. So like, everyone wants this, from Dries to the top down. So there's a lot of pressure on this too, which sometimes gets to some of us. So it can be a stressful time, but we're going to make progress. It's going to be okay. So let's cover some like what's improved in Drupal 8. Let's just kind of like take a current state of what's in Drupal 8. Because there have been some improvements that I think should help kind of the out-of-the-box people evaluating Drupal kind of thing. And let's see, that's a little bit small. Let me see if I can bump that up. There we go. So out of the box, you get a listing of all the files on your site now, which is so people want to see what they have. It's kind of a simple text-based list. You don't get to see like thumbnails or anything, but this is a view because use is in core. So you could change this to a list of thumbnails if you wanted to, if possible. And you can see like there's a used in column, so you can see where that file's been used too, which is kind of handy. And you're like, well, I had that file uploaded. Where did I put it? And it links to the content. We now officially have a standard Wysiwyg editor in Drupal 8 core, which is CK Editor. And due to some of the great work that Nate Howe did in Drupal 8, we now actually have like an actual image upload that works with Drupal. So you hit the image button in CK Editor and you do an upload and type in your alt text and what size you want, alignment, all that kind of fun stuff. And it just works out of the box. You don't have to install any module for this. It was kind of really nice. Let's see, what is this one? We also have multiple uploading provided out of the box in Drupal 8. So if you had a file or image field and you hit the upload button and you selected 5 files and just dragged them over, it'll upload those 5 files for you instead of one at a time. Assuming your field supports more than one value. So if it's just a one value field, it would only do one. So it's just kind of a little thing that makes it easier if you're doing lots of images on one content. So that's kind of what's new in Drupal 8. Lots of good incremental improvements, but there's still kind of this lack of, rounding everything out, like the media library, that kind of stuff, selecting from reusing images, that kind of thing. So we're kind of starting to turn our eye towards Drupal 8 around DrupalCon Prague. I did not attend this, but there was a large group of people here that did attend, and they had a core conversation and a sprint and lots of BOFs to kind of discuss, like, okay, in a theoretical world where we don't have to port modules to Drupal 8, we could start fresh. What could we do? And how would we want to do it? And this is kind of the plan that they came up with. So again, we want to make it easy to use, multi-upload, in the media browser, have an intuitive library, need to be integrated with Wysiwyg. There should be some kind of drag and drop too. We wanted it to be pluggable, so like not just one module you install or one module that has several subcomponents that other people could reuse too, because there's lots of different media solutions out there for Drupal 7 that aren't really talking together and kind of doing the same thing several different times over. And we consider that a wasted effort that we're having to do that. And why can't we just collaborate and try and reuse what we can? We want to make sure that we get the basic components of our plan, whatever those shall be, out as fast as possible so we can start people, so that plan to reuse stuff, we can actually get people looking at the code to reuse and give us feedback and start trying it so that they don't, well, there's nothing available yet, I'll just write my own. So we want to make sure that we prevent that. And of course, using existing tools, all the stuff that's in Drupal 8 now, like configuration management, the new entity API, the new field API, plugins, all the good stuff that you might be hearing about this weekend. And they also decided this weird thing, weird to me. Is everyone familiar with the file entity module in Drupal 7? Raise of hands. Okay, a fair amount. So Drupal 7 introduced the concept of entities as kind of like this remote, it's a thing. Users are entities, your nodes are entities, taxonomy terms are entities, and files are actually entities in Drupal 7, but doesn't provide a UI to manage them. You can only interact with them on content or fields. The file entity module in Drupal 7 basically extended this concept and allowed you to interact with them as individual things and not things you had to work with on content to work with them. And so we kind of extended this concept to like all kinds of things are files. Like YouTube videos are technically a file. that we support in Drupal 7 via the file entity module, even though it doesn't actually exist on the server. Like, it exists in YouTube remotely, but we treat it as a local file, and it was kind of a nice way of having everything use the same system. But this group of people decided they didn't like that, and there's a fair amount of people that disagree and don't actually like this solution, and that's totally fair. So they didn't want to treat everything as local files. They want to have actually a separate thing and not have to just use the file entities. They wanted a media entity that could be a local file or could be a YouTube video. It could be a tweet, you know, something that actually isn't a video. So they wanted to standardize on that concept. I strongly disagreed, but we'll get to that, how we came together on that. So that was their plan that they developed in Prague, and I really wished I could have been there because I could have fought for our file entity and media plan as kind of what I had originally thought. And I'm sorry that this is kind of like textually dense. I'm going to get to the good stuff after this too. We're gonna demo some stuff, so stick with me on this. Let's see. So I've been working with the media module and file entity in Drupal 7 for about 4 or 5 years now. And I'll be the first to admit like all the problems that we have. Like, I'll be the most negative person, which is kind of not a good person to champion it. But I think it's a good sense to have, you know, the realities of what your system has and when you should use it and when you shouldn't. A big thing is we don't have a stable 2.0 release yet of media module or file entity, which includes like all of our views integration for the media library and that kind of stuff, and like lots of improved APIs. It's still in like an alpha state right now, which is kind of sad considering how long Drupal 7 has been out. So we're still trying to work on that, but we keep spinning our wheels almost at this point. And an interesting reason for that is Wysiwyg, because Drupal 7 doesn't standardize on one official Wysiwyg. It wants to support everything via the Wysiwyg module, which means that trying to do one thing right on one Wysiwyg editor doesn't necessarily mean it'll work on the other thing. Or people may use the CK editor module and not the Wysiwyg module. Like, there's just so many different combinations of things that could go wrong, and they typically seem to go wrong for us. Especially when like putting media inside a body field. We haven't gotten that right. So we're frustrated by that. It's kind of complex to configure out of the box. You have to manage file display and manage display as two different things, and it's not easy to understand how to get started. And we kind of have some uphill battles against what Core wants to do, because Core assumes that files shouldn't be edited by themselves, and files can only be used once on a field, not reused on another field, because Core doesn't ship with a library or media browser. So like, we're having to fight against that kind of thing. Core doesn't have a multiple upload workflow, so we're having to integrate like Pluggable module or the library, but sometimes it doesn't work right, that kind of stuff. We've had problems with accessibility too, making sure that all of our stuff is accessible. We're providing that mechanism wherever we can. And just really trying to find that right balance between a system that's usable out of the box and easy to understand versus extensible for all those like enterprise clients too. It's a frustrating balance to make. And of course, like the actual maintainership of the modules too. Like Acquia had made a really good push when they first came out with their Drupal 7, Drupal Gardens. They pushed the first Drupal 7 version of the media module out, but then kind of left it when in a half-finished state since they had what they did for Acquia. And I can't fault them for that. And then it's like the community trying to maintain this large module, this large suite of things that so many people rely on. Like, it's really difficult. And again, it's a lot of pressure. And lots more. This is like a really negative slide. I'm sorry. And so we kind of came across, I started thinking about Drupal 8 and how we can start fresh a little bit. You know, we might port some things. And it kind of mirrored what the people in Prague had came up with, that we kind of want to split some things off. Like, maybe it's nice if you didn't want to have fields on your files, but you wanted to reuse everything. Like, that maybe would be nice. You know, focus on involving the right workflow and tools from the first day, same as the prog group had done. All that kind of good stuff. So we're at a disagreement here. Like, the main disagreement was, like, they want to do a media entity, we want to do a file entity, and we think each other is horribly wrong for thinking that, which kind of seems silly. Like, it's a very technical argument, but this is Drupal. We do that all the time as developers. So there's this big, if you want to see the history of it, there's the groups.drupal.org post where we all argued about it, and we didn't really agree. But we had an opportunity after that post, and we all kind of like went back to what we were doing for 2 months. New York City Camp in this last April. They're always a kind of a big pusher for Drupal media stuff and improvements, and they kind of like, hey, let's all get together, and they kind of invited everyone and made sure to support people coming in, and we had all these different kind of viewpoints from the media ecosystem all in the same room. And we kind of locked ourselves in the conference center in the UN, which is really cool, but also like tight security. And we locked ourselves in and like, okay, let's figure out how can we move forward from here. And it was a super, super productive, like 3 hours. It was great. Like, okay, here's all the common components we need. And we just whiteboarded it and wrote it down and documented it. And we're like, this is great. So how we decided to resolve forward is we're actually, this difference between media entity and file entities, we're going to leave it alone. We're going to each work on those individually. Because if we can leverage all the components on top of those two different media entities or file entities and make them work for both of them, they'll work for anyone. And anyone can build on top of those, which is, like, we're embracing that difference and make sure that we're keeping it abstract enough. So there's probably going to be a file entity and a media entity in Drupal 8, and you'll get to pick between them. And I'm not going to help you pick between them. We'll figure out some documentation for that. But obviously I'm going to be biased towards file entity. We're going to split it into some independent parts. And these parts should work together when they're here. So there's kind of the two biggest parts here are the entity Wysiwyg embed called entity embed, which is basically, I have an entity, a file, node, whatever. I want to embed it in my Wysiwyg. It's going to solve that in Drupal 8, one module. And then we're also going to be working on an entity browser component. So it's going to do like the library stuff, the tabs where you can upload or select a file or type in a URL. That kind of UI is going to be abstracted to that module in Drupal 8. And so like the entity embed will use that browser functionality if that module is there. Otherwise it has a very basic, like, my entity type is file and file 1 I want to embed. It has a fallback and can be used without the browsing component, which is kind of nice. And we have other components as well that are a little bit more minor. We're starting to work on a roadmap. I'll figure out what the link to this is, because it's kind of boring. Like step 1, step 2, we're going to focus on the basic stuff. We're going to enhance it. Step 3, step 4. We don't have timelines on any of the stuff right now. Most of the first part, step 1, is done. But it's boring. So I'm just going to skip through it. And we also have some interesting challenges in Drupal 8. We're not yet sure how we're going to manage external dependencies in Contrib. Because in Drupal 8, we've made the shift to encourage people to use external libraries a lot more. But it's also interesting because Drupal 8 includes its external libraries in Git, in its code. It doesn't actually have to download anything or fetch them. It includes them in its repository. But Contrib does not have that same ability right now. You're actually forbidden to include external libraries unless you've modified them at some point, which is an interesting kind of difference. So we're not sure if we need to rely on Pluggable as a library. How do we manage that for the experience of people downloading the media module in Drupal 8? We're not sure about that yet. There's some weird stuff with like field API that's still in flux with Drupal 8. That just there's a lot of assumptions and things that we're trying to experiment with and do some crazy things that Drupal core didn't think about that we're still fighting. If you are attending the Drupal 8 sprint on Sunday, we would love to have you help on some of these issues too. But they're kind of hard too. But we'd love your help. Files in Drupal 8 and Drupal 7 out of the box lack any kind of like access control. Aside from like the private file system, which is not very flexible. So you can't have like different access for a person who should view a file but can't download it, which is kind of a common requirement for like commerce sites. So we want to make sure that we have a proper access control method in Drupal 8 and build that into core and then extend it with these solutions. So we could have those things very easily. Otherwise, we're kind of duplicating that work again. And kind of along with Field API, there's a typed data system in Drupal core. I'm not going to go into that because even I don't understand it. But it's failing at some weird stuff too. But let's skip over that. A fun thing. In Drupal 7, if you uploaded an image to an image field on your node, saved it, and then went back and edited your node, and maybe switched it to a different file, and saved your node again, your original file is deleted within 6 hours. You can't reuse it after that. Because again, core, we don't have a media browser. Why should people be able to reuse files? We'll just delete it from the file system and clean it up. And there was no way to work around that, really, aside from like really hacky solutions like the file lock module, which we typically recommend in Drupal 7. So this is like one of our big things that we wanted to focus on, just like we need to fix this somehow in Drupal 8. And I'm happy to say that in New York City, we actually fixed this in Drupal core, in Drupal 8, so it's now configurable. So the default's 6 hours, but a module could say like, no, just change that to never delete old files. And people can manually delete them if they'd like to. Or they could say delete after 4 weeks, that kind of stuff. So this is fixed in Drupal 8, but we're working on fixing this in Drupal 7 still, and trying to backport this. So we're hopeful on that still. And of course, if you'd like to help out with this, there's lots of ways to help. As much as we're going to code, it could use more help too. We need lots of different experience. So like people with front-end experience, people with usability and interaction design. We would definitely love you to talk to us and see how you can help, because a lot of us are coders and we don't typically pride ourselves on usability. I like to, but we always use experts in this area. We could use a project manager to help us out too, if you're interested in that. And just like ideas, like I wish Media Module could do X. I really have this advanced use case on my site. How could we support that? Or how could we build an API that could allow us to make a custom module to do this? We'd love to hear those types of user stories as well. And there's lots of different resources here. We have a media group on groups.drupal.org. We have weekly Scrum hangouts on Google+, every Tuesday morning, and we're probably going to like alternate Tuesday morning, Tuesday evening between weeks. And we all just kind of get together in the hangout or an IRC and just talk about what we're working on. Is anyone blocked by anything? So we hang out together. We've got our projects on Drupal.org. We have a HackPad, which is a collaborative document editing site. So drupalmedia.hackpad.com, you can see like the things that we're planning and working on. Like we're starting to map out the architecture for individual modules. You can go check those out, and they're public, and you can comment on them without needing to sign in or access anything, which is really nice. We're in the Drupal-Media IRC channel. You can find me on Drupal.org or Twitter if you need to. I just forgot, it's Sunday sprint, not Fridays. And we're going to be also having a big week-long sprint at DrupalCon Amsterdam in late September or October as well, like total week-long sprint. So yeah, there's lots of different ways to get involved. So I'll maybe open it up for little questions, and then we'll shoot into a demo for what we have. And that's probably going to be the most exciting thing, because I'm really excited about that part too. Any questions so far? Yes, in the back.
A really unfair question. You can refuse to answer. So Media 2x for Drupal 7, like, what's the story? Like, are you guys thinking more about Drupal 8? Is there still a concentrated effort on getting, something more stable there?
Yeah, so the question is, what's the plan for the 2x release of Media? There are still some of the maintainers working on it. I'm occasionally diving back into the issue queue to try and help things. We're really trying to focus on things that are like beta blockers now and trying to resolve them. There's a couple people from Acquia working on it as part of the demo team that they have, or the office of the CTO, that are just like, we just really need to get a 2.0 release, and then we can kind of worry about bugs then at that point. So we're trying to get to that point. It's been very, very slow progress. We hope to at some point. We don't yet have a date or a time. I would say it's probably like 75% people working on Drupal 8 now and 25% on Drupal 7, unfortunately. So.
You do have like a list of data blockers and stuff. There's like a
yeah, if you go to the media or like file entity issue queue pages, if you search for like tag data blocker, those should come up. So yeah. All right. So what I'm going to demo. Oh yes.
More with the D8 stuff. Is there work being done to make sure that the media module will work in conjunction with the responsive images module?
It should be out of the box, yeah.
Should work.
Yep, it's provided by core, so we need to integrate with it whenever possible. So,
Okay.
yep.
So like when you have the media figure, you'll be able to pick like a picture mapping or something like that to pick the type of responsive image.
For like when you embed in Wysiwyg,
Yeah.
I'll show you.
Perfect. Get it because it's a cat on the screen.
Yeah. I'm just going to close my IRC.
Sorry.
So this is my Drupal 7 site, and this is like a very fresh pull from today. I had to fix a couple of bugs in one of the modules just because I hadn't looked at it in 2 days, but it broke lots of things. What?
Did you say Drupal 7?
Drupal 8, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. As indicated by Drupal 8.dev. Sorry if I misspoke. So we're going to demo the entity embed module. Thank you very much. And like I said, we don't have the entity browser stuff working, so it's a very simple kind of interface, but I'm just really, really, really excited at the possibilities that this solves. It solves so many issues that we have with Wysiwyg embedding in Drupal 7. So I have a test article here with aptly a cat GIF. I've got quick body text, a tag, I've got an image upload, and I've got a file on it too. So just a basic article. And so let's go and add another piece of content. And I know that the old one is node 1, just FYI. So this is the Drupal 8 content screen here, which is kind of nice because it's a little bit more responsive and looks better and has less important stuff off to the right, which is great. And when you enable the entity embed module and configure it in your text formats, that kind of stuff, which actually I can show. I should show that. So we have this new text formats and editors screen in Drupal 8. So I've got my full HTML text format configured with CK Editor, and I can configure it. And I've got this nice little drag and drop UI for configuring which buttons should show up in my editor. This is all Drupal core. And we have a filter with display embedded entities. So you want to enable that. And then there's this nice little button with the letter E on it for entity. We probably should figure out something better for that. But it works for now. And you can just drag it to the configured toolbar that you have in your editor. And so let's go to a new article, and let's click our E button for entity embed. And again, very, very simple selection. So I can pick what type of thing I want to embed. So I'm going to pick content for nodes. And I'm going to type in entity 1. Drupal 8 actually has the concept of unique identifiers for all of your entities. So when you transfer content between servers, the node ID may change, but the unique ID is always the same. You could actually type in the unique ID here too, and it would resolve. But that's mostly an internal thing. But let's hit next. And it says, okay, I've selected article 1. I get a couple different options to pick how I want to display this. Default is just like a rendered entity. And then we're doing an interesting thing here. This selection with like RSS category, label, entity ID, and rendered entity, these are actually formatters for the entity reference field. And we're reusing them as ways that you can display embedded entities. So if some other module adds a formatter for an entity reference field, you can automatically use it here. Which is, again, it's going into that concept of reusing things and not having to write another thing again. You write on formatter for your entity reference field, and it just works. So I can display it as the label. And I get all the options that my formatter offers too. So I can say, yes, I want to link it to that article 1. Or, yes. And I've got a preview right there in my Wysiwyg. And we'll name this article 2. And save. And I've got my link to article 1. Let's do something more advanced. Let's delete that. And let's pick our node 1. And let's do rendered entity. And let's display it as a teaser. And I've got my entity rendered as a teaser within my Wysiwyg. And thanks to the new CK editor, API, and everything in Drupal core, I can't actually change this. Well, I can edit it and change the settings, but I can't actually type in here because it's one thing that I can move around, but I can't type because it's a rendered entity. You can't really do that. And I think one of the really coolest things about this module is if I hit view source, because it's going to get a little geeky here. Rather than any kind of weird little token syntax, this is actually using HTML to embed this entity. And then we can do interesting stuff. I use my laser pointer, except not for my cats. So we've got the display plugin that we're using. We're using the entity reference entity view formatter, and we encode that as a data attribute in that HTML directly. And the settings is in a data attribute encoding it as JSON. And we've got the ID, the entity type. And actually we put in the unique identifier for you if you didn't provide it. So all of this is directly in there in the source. And will work. And it's not a weird token syntax, it's just HTML, and it gets converted on the filter system. Yes?
So when you're picking the embed, you can choose between the entity ID or the UUID.
Yep.
If you pick the entity ID, will it always, and then you move it to a server or something like that, does it know to just use the UUID to match those things up?
Yeah, so the great thing is that we automatically look up the UUID no matter what you provided and put it in this embed. And then whenever we render, we automatically look for the UUID first. And so if it's on another system, as long as that UUID resolves, it'll display. And the entity ID could be not valid, but it wouldn't matter as long as the UUID is correct. So this solves deploying files between servers right there. It's done, taken care of. It just feels weird because it's such a hard problem that we struggled with in Drupal 7. It's yeah, we solved it. And I could change, if I wanted to, I could change this to my file 1 if I wanted to. This is editable if you wanted to do this. Or put random HTML that does this, but we're not going to do that. But like if I changed it to say, I want to change my view mode to full. That didn't work. Okay. Got it. But you can, something we added recently, you can double click and edit how that entity is displayed. So we'll just do entity ID, which is weird, and I'm not sure why anyone would want to do that, because it just outputs one. But it actually gives a better picture of how this is like movable around here. I'm going to put some text above and below. Like I can just move this entity around, and it moves that HTML tag. 5 minutes? 10 minutes. Okay, all right. We're going to do fine. So one of the big problems that we've always had in the media issue queue is like, okay, I have a file. I want to embed a link to that file in my Wysiwyg. It sounds really simple, but it's been another one of those really hard problems for us to solve in Drupal 7. I'd like to point out, again, we have solved that. So let's embed a file. And I'm going to type file 5, which is a PDF, I think. Yes, it is a PDF I've uploaded. And again, you get an option of entity reference formatters and also file field formatters, which includes this handy generic file. And I'm going to type in a description. This is my PDF file. And embed. Done. It just works. Yes?
So does that work if you have a Meteor file field directly on that node? Like, can you grab, like on that node you've got five files.
Yes.
You can then embed those in the body field.
There's nothing that's really introspecting what you have on this content. It's more just like, just give me an entity type and an ID. Yeah. Ideally, what you should be able to do with the entity, if you hit the embed button and that entity browser component is available, like you should be able to upload a file straight from there if you needed to, and which saves that file, and then, hey, I've got new file 6, use that. Or if there's the media browser, you should be able to see what's on that, the files that you've already uploaded, on this node. And okay, so that's a file. No one's really impressed with that.
I was impressed.
Okay, good.
Like, I was a lot impressed.
Yeah.
So let's do an image now. So I know file 4 is an image. And indeed it's this random string JPEG. I now have my entity reference formatters, my file field formatters, and image field formatters available. Lots of options to pick from. But I like to point out we have responsive image available. And so I've got all those options available that are available on the formatter I can directly use here. Or I could just display it as a regular image. Oh, I'm not sure what's up with that. We found a bug. Yay! Let's go back. Let's try it again. That responsive image formatter might be weird. There we go. Okay. So just the normal image formatter, I could pick my image style that I wanted to do. And I mentioned accessibility before. Like, the formatters themselves don't actually provide inputs for alternate and title text. That's usually on the field itself, but we've actually replicated that behavior here if the image is a file. Or if you're using an image field formatter, it provides, hey, do you want to provide some alternate text and title text? So let's do that. And let's make it a thumbnail. Hey, look, it put a thumbnail right in there. And the really fun thing is if I look at the source, remember I typed in that alternate text? It's right there as an alt attribute and as a title attribute. So that when this is saved, you can see that, but that title attribute is directly on that image now. Because it was an attribute in which we converted then to an image using that formatter. this has me like really super excited about Drupal 8 because it's like kind of easy to see why everyone's kind of like excited to work on Drupal 8 instead of the Drupal 7 stuff now. 'Cause it's like, oh my god, we can finally solve all these problems with this module, and it's just been extremely encouraging that we have this working, and like people are using this module in production on production Drupal 8 sites that are live right now, which is crazy to think about. But like encouraging, we're doing the right thing. People are finding this useful out of the box already, which is great. Anything else we want to demo or see?
So, just so I understand the roadmap, this is a contrib module right now. These
Yep.
are contrib modules. Is the goal at some point to like get them in on a feature release to core, or to always keep it contrib?
Right now, the plan is to keep them in contrib because we want to make sure that like the media module in Drupal 8 is probably going to be like, okay, we're going to require entity embed, entity browser, and we're going to have like our pre-configured browser with certain tabs we want for the media module set up. And it's more just like these will be actually like feature modules now, essentially. So we want to make sure that we're playing with that concept and making sure that we're fitting that use case in Drupal 8. I don't see any reason why with the new semantic versioning going into Drupal 8 core, so instead of like 7.1 and 7.2, there's now going to be 8.0.0 and 8.0.1 for like bug fixes, but for new features, we can put them in an 8.1.0. So there's like this concept of actual minor releases now, or major releases, like not Drupal 9, but 8.1, that we can add new things. So theoretically, we could make a proposal to put some of these modules in Drupal core on one of those like 8.1 or 8.5 down the road. If we've proven that it works and could be useful from a core perspective. So, yeah.
How do you look up IDs if you don't know like 4 and 5?
That's where it's like we typically recommend people have the entity browser module also enabled. And we just want to make sure that we provided some kind of simple UI out of the box. Theoretically that text field could be like an autocomplete where you type in the title of the entity and it maybe figures out the ID for you. That's totally probably a valid proposal. That would maybe make that a little bit more useful. But typically, we're going to see this used in combination with the entity browser. Like, the media module will have both as a dependency, and you wouldn't see that simple UI at all. You'd still see the embedding options. That won't change, but the selection would change, yeah. And we tried to make sure we designed entity embed with that in mind. Like, it's two different steps of the form so that something can override that first step. So if you wanted another weird selection kind of UI, you could totally do that yourself. Again, it's that extensibility and pluggability kind of thing. All right, any other questions at all? Everyone's mind is just blown. Okay, cool. Well, I'm really excited about this. Oh, yes. Yes, Kathy.
You talked, like, at the beginning, you were like, oh, this slide's depressing, and da-da-da, right? And you've been working on this forever.
Yes.
Right? And you've got two huge projects, right? One is 7.
Yep.
And you've got Drupal 8.
Yep.
So can you give like a little overall summary for how you're feeling? Right? Because you're like excited about this stuff, but you've got like these two projects. What the heck are you going to do? Like, are you focused on both, and how are you feeling right now? And
So more like a personal, how am I doing with managing the two?
yeah.
That could probably like be a session on itself, almost, like a therapy session, group therapy. I think I've learned over the last year, especially now that it's like since my son is born and I have half the free time that I usually have. Like I pick my battles on what I want to work on, and I have to manage that very, very tightly. So like and I work on things on a rotation basis usually. So it's like I'll work on one module one day, and I'll just like go through the issue queue, commit anything that needs it, push out a release. And I probably won't touch that module for like 3 months. And that's usually how I maintain 100 modules at a time, because I don't do it very well for 3 months at the time for that module. And so I kind of pick, okay, I'm going to focus on entity embed for this week, or entity browser for this week. and then maybe 1 week it's like, well, okay, I feel bad. I should go back in the Drupal 7 issue queue. Let's see what's up on the thing. I'm gonna check with the other maintainers, get with them, and I kind of make sure I switch focus a lot.
You're still doing all of the things.
Yes, yeah,
But not at the same
but not at the same time. Yes,
That's a very interesting way to deal with that.
I mean it keeps it varied. It's like, I'm able to focus on something for a week or a short time, but I'm able to focus on that thing. And I'm not trying to worry about. I literally don't care
And it's
about the other things, and that's what I have to do. So it feels bad to say that, but I don't feel bad when I say that. It sounds bad when I say that, but I don't feel bad about it. So
And you're going to keep doing that then?
that's the plan. I mean, hopefully at some point we will care even less about the Drupal 7 stuff once we get a 2.0 release out. And it'll just be like, well, if there's bug fixes or security issues that come up, we'll fix those. But I mean, we have so much hope and promise into getting this stuff done right in Drupal 8 first. That's really, as soon as we can, we should have all of our attention on it. And there are people that have all their attention on it. I'm maybe just 75% now. So does that help answer that? Cool. Yes.
Is there a way that any red could work for Drupal 7?
There's actually an issue in the issue queue for someone that wants to use this in Drupal 7. I don't see why it shouldn't work.
It's just data attributes.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Depends on HTML as a text format in Drupal 7, right?
yeah, there might be some weird things that since like some of the CKEditor APIs aren't available, maybe like you have to make sure you're using CKEditor 4 to make some of this stuff work. I don't see any reason why it can't be backported. The more issue might be like the entity browser stuff. I don't think we should focus on backporting that at all. We're not going to spend time on it. So
Like if that's pluggable, in theory, you could just be like,
you could form alter it. Yeah, it's just a form.
sounds awesome.
Yeah. Yes. Did you have a question?
Well, she pretty much covered mine.
Okay.
I was going to be, if Drupal 8 is a big question mark as to when we can
Yeah.
use it, and even after it's live, we're still going to be with 7 for a while for our sites.
Yeah, I totally hear it too, and I'm at Lullabot. We're working on a project where we're coming up with this exact same problem. It's like, okay, how do we embed the stuff in the body fields again? What are we gonna do? Do we use the 3 different solutions that we've used before on 3 different projects, or what are we? And I kind of put out, hey, here's what we're doing in Drupal 8, and I'm trying to make a push to have this big corporate client pay to have the backported to Drupal 7. We're gonna see. Don't quote me on that. I'm gonna propose it because it would be really nice if we had this available. And I want to use it in Drupal 7 too. I'm working on Drupal 7 sites all the time. I would love to have this. So
Really awesome.
Yeah.
Great work.
I think so. Yeah. Thanks.